This is the Sports Source, presented by Junk Be Gone and Renewal by Anderson. Now, your host, John Pennington.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Sports Source. Happy to have you with us today. We've got tons of Tennessee basketball. I know what you're thinking. Seeding, tournament paths, who they could play. We've got all that, lots of it. SEC tournament as well. We'll break all that down. A little bit of football to talk about. Spring practice going on. Also, just a second or two on the Holly Warlick situation. We'll cover all that and more. Let's get into it since it's a packed show. First segment brought to you by our friends at Junk Be Gone. It is almost time for spring cleaning, folks. And at my house, that means it's time to call Junk Be Gone. You can rent a dumpster, fill it yourself, and they take it away for you. Or you can call them. They bring the dumpster. They do the lifting and loading too. And you don't have to even fool with that stuff. Anything you need, they can help you with your spring cleaning project or any kind of project you might have. Junk Be Gone. Check them out. junkbegone.biz is their website. All right. Want to welcome in our first wave of panelists today. We have right here our first two guys over here, our basketball analyst, former Division I basketball player and former UT assistant basketball coach, Mark Pankratz. Former Vol basketball player Isaiah Victor right there, thanks to these two. David Ubben from The Athletic is right down there. And Jimmy Himes back with us from WNML 990 and 99.1. Thanks to all of you for being here. Tennessee had a shot at back-to-back SEC titles for the first time in school history yesterday. Didn't get it done, as you know. Lost 84-80 at Auburn after a barrage of 34 three-point shots. We warned you about that last week, that this is a team that chucks them up there, and they chucked them up there a lot yesterday. I thought Tennessee kind of played into Auburn's hands. Let's take a look at some of these numbers I've got here. When you look at it, Tennessee launched up 28 three-pointers of their own. That's the second most all season. They averaged only 19 three-pointers a game. They were one of the fewer three-point launching teams. They launched fewer than most teams in the SEC. But they started gunning it yesterday, and what that did was it kind of sped up the game. I think it fed into Auburn's ability to get transition three-pointers open at the other end. You look and see where Tennessee had only been giving up 23.5 per game. Auburn gets 34 off yesterday. They only averaged 29.5. They got 34. So they shot more than they normally shot. So I think you're feeding into that, and I think also focusing a little bit more on offense, which is something you fell into a few times this year. You had 13 turnovers. They only had 5, their season low. I thought you kind of played into their hands. You guys can agree or disagree with that, but I thought one of the reasons they lost, they played Auburn's game.
They did, and I think BP needs to be commended for how hard he gets those guys to play, and they play that guard system. They chucked them up there, but you're right. We got away from what we're really good at, and we've talked about it game in, game out, of pounding that ball inside, playing inside out. I think if we would have done that, utilized our motion offense more, we would have, and let Bone go to work, we would have had a better chance. But long threes lead to long rebounds, which leads to fast break opportunities, and Auburn took advantage of it.
Thoughts, gentlemen? Agree, disagree?
Yeah, I mean, at some point you got to be who you are, and we talked about it last week. Just the way that Tennessee plays defense, they're going to give up a lot of attempts. I think Auburn knew that coming in, and you saw even on the rotations a lot of the times they're not even looking to drive; they're looking for one more extra pass.
Right. Let's
get a better shot. You saw that all day, and so I mean, if you change a whole lot of who you are, then a lot of other things can go wrong for you. So I thought Tennessee, they played who they are. They did both those things on both sides of the ball, but ultimately you got to dance with the girl that brung you in some ways, and Tennessee did that, and they came pretty close, obviously. We'll get into it a little bit later, but a tough call, came a little bit close to there, but yeah, not really the result they're looking for, but I don't think you can change a whole lot of who you are.
Well, I think that to underscore what you're saying, John, is that Tennessee ended up taking only 33 shots from two-point, and they shot 61% doing that. But when they shot the 28 threes, they only shot 32%. And so I thought that was a huge difference in the game. So you only took 5 more shots from two-point range than you did from three-point range. That's not what Tennessee does. That's not been their DNA this year. And I do think they got caught up in trying to match Auburn's three-point shooting.
I thought they got a little out of sorts too. I mean, twice yesterday with the shot clock violations. I can't remember 2 shot clock violations for this team all year, much less 2 in one game.
And 2 that were just oblivious.
Yeah. Total.
And about the threes, we shot bad threes too. We shot too many bad threes at a bad time of the game. I can remember one really deep three, and I can remember 2 or 3 overhand. I mean, the ball moves around, and if you're open, you got to shoot the three, but you don't want to shoot overhand, and you don't want to shoot really, really deep threes.
Right. If you got an open three, fine, take it. But if you're if you're pulling up and gunning when you don't have to, when you got a hand in your face, that's not Tennessee's ball game in my opinion.
The perfect example of that was, I think it was about 3-4 minutes left when Bowden takes that transition three really early on the left side of the floor. That was a perfect example of us falling into their system. One of the things to what you were talking about, what Tennessee has made us good all year is what is a concern for me is we've been really good on motion offense, moving the ball, moving bodies. Our defense, the helping the helper, our activity, you're seeing us be fatigued. You're seeing us being tired down the stretch with this motion. And so we didn't keep playing our motion offense, which if we did, I think that would have led to more interior inside scores.
It's a shame no one's been putting up graphics for 6 weeks showing how Tennessee's playing more minutes than anybody else. Oh, wait. This show has been doing that. I thought that another interesting thing in yesterday's game was, well, it gets back to what we were talking about early. I'll be quick with this. At about I think it wasn't the 4-minute mark, it was the 8-minute mark of the 8-minute timeout of the first half. Barnes takes the timeout, and they come back out, and they start working it inside more. They start taking the time a little bit more. I thought for most of the rest of the first half, they played the way they normally do. Then they came out to start the second half. Auburn was on fire. They were hot. And Tennessee, I thought that's where it got away from them, and they never got back to, in my mind, what they normally do. But, David, you mentioned, and you knew we were going to talk about this, there was a bizarre call. We don't talk about officials here on the show. I set the table. I don't cry about officiating. I know that there's bad officiating in every conference. Typically, bad officiating can be defined as my team lost. Everybody says, well, the league's so inconsistent. Get back to me when you find a league that has consistent officiating. You coached, you played. I'm guessing officiating kind of questionable everywhere. So I normally don't bring it up. Yesterday, however, one play, two bizarre things happened on it. Auburn fires up a three. There's a tip-in. The tip-in could have been a goaltend. In fact, it should have been in my view. It's in the cylinder. But not only did they count it as a tip-in for two, they counted it as a three, which kind of changed the way you're playing out the end of the game there. Tennessee's down 4 instead of down 3. Well, that changes the way you're going at it if you're Rick Barnes. Thoughts on that bizarro call? If you were out there as a coach, what are you saying to the officials after that one?
Well, I thought it was obvious that it was a tip, and so I don't know, Jimmy probably knows the rule better, if you can actually go to the monitor and stop it right there to see if it was a goaltending or not. But it was clear to me that it was a tip, so whether it was a goaltend or not, that should have been stopped right there because it was obvious. It was obvious that someone touched the ball in the cylinder.
I thought it was very similar to the LSU at UK. And they got the call wrong there, I believe, too. Yeah. And it's almost identical call. You can't go back to the monitors and review that call. And they, in turn, lost the game on a bad call. And that didn't quite what happened to us, but it took the sting out of it for me because I saw it happen to them. And I'm like, well, it can go like that. But
you're right, it's not reviewable.
Yeah, it's an awkward gray area because you can review whether it's a 2 or a 3, but you can't review basket interference. And so that's like, well, we're not talking about a guy's foot on the line, but you're in kind of a weird gray area. And you look big picture, too. At the end of the night, you have an outright champion in LSU that has a suspended coach, a suspended player, Javonte Smart, and they get the benefit, obviously, of that call, the LSU-Kentucky game that he mentioned earlier. It's just not a good look for the SEC in general, and officials aren't quite as segmented in basketball as they are in football, where you don't have necessarily SEC officials, but a tough look all around for the SEC.
Oh, yeah, not a great night. I'm guessing they weren't thrilled with the outcomes last evening.
I see a rule change.
Very quickly, I want to get to this. I thought now that the games matter, and let's face it, it's basketball, and technically you could make the case we're still not at the point where the games matter because your season's going to be remembered by what you do in the NCAA. But you're getting there to that point where these tournament games matter. I have a feeling that when Tennessee loses, and I don't think I don't think anybody's going to go, wow, I wouldn't have thought of this. I think yesterday is kind of the prescription for beating Tennessee. I think when Tennessee finally loses in the tournament, it will look like yesterday, and here's what I mean by that. I thought, one, you played lax on defense again. Now, you're back up to 20. Since the Kentucky game, you had been better. You'd had everybody under 42% since the Kentucky game. Tennessee is 25-1 when foes shoot under 46%. Auburn was over 46 yesterday. Tennessee just 2-3. All right, so I think when you start worrying about offense over defense, that's where you get burned. Settling for three-point attempts. Tennessee 20-0 this year when attempting 21 or fewer three-pointers. just 7-4 when taking 22 or more three-pointers. And foul trouble, Schofield played 25 minutes yesterday, fouled out. Williams had 3 fouls. I think that's your recipe for disaster. Now, Jimmy, you had one other thing you wanted to add to the list.
Yeah, and not to necessarily blame him, but in Tennessee's 4 losses, Lamonte Turner is 10 out of 45 overall from the field, and he's 4 out of 31 on threes. He's averaging 6.5 points. He's a better player than that, but when he struggles and when he shoots poorly, that has been a common thread of Tennessee's 4 losses.
And
If you open cold, I don't know that you should keep firing them.
Well, one more thing: when Bone is out, when Bone is not your point guard, we saw what happened yesterday. Teams went press, they went zone, they gave different looks, and we struggled to have efficient offense with Lamonte at the point guard.
And Lamonte's got to mix his shots up. It's too many threes. Everybody knows it. When and it's over a hand. Just drive some. Even he drove last night. He missed a shot, but Grant Williams got the rebound because he drew Grant Williams' man. We just got to put the pressure on the basket.
Good deal. We're already 2 minutes over. That's typically how we start this show. So we'll be racing the rest of the way. Later on, we're going to preview Tennessee's path through the SEC tournament. But coming up next, UT, can they still get a number 1 seed? Would a number 2 seed be better? That's where most people have them. We'll look at paths, foes, everything. Come on back.